In 2011, a deep-sea submersible mapping the abyssal plains off the coast of Crete stumbled upon something impossible. Not a shipwreck, not a geological anomaly, but a silent, sprawling field of impossibly lifelike figures scattered across the seafloor. They were not carved from marble. They were something else entirely. Initial scans revealed the chilling truth. These were not statues, but calcified organic matter, preserved in their final, terrifying moments. One figure in particular, a mariner by its ancient garb, was frozen mid-stride, its face a mask of abject horror, its arms raised in a futile defense against an unseen, instantaneous doom. This was not art. It was an arcane graveyard. This terrifying discovery gives a new, chilling context to the ancient world's most potent symbol of dread, the Gorgonian. That terrifying face of a serpent-haired woman emblazoned on the shields of hoplites and the doorways of temples was never a mere decorative monster. It was an apotropaic warning, an ancient biological hazard sign. It was a symbol that conveyed a primal, instinctual message understood across cultures. A predator of unimaginable power hunts here. The Gorgonian was not a myth to ward off evil spirits. It was a field guide entry, a stark anatomical drawing of a real and present danger, a warning that to gaze upon this entity was to invite a petrifying end. To understand this entity, we must look to the foundational lore of the three Gorgon sisters, Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa. These were never just characters in a story, they were a biological classification. The names themselves are not poetic fictions, but functional descriptors for three distinct yet related species of this apex predator. Stheno, the forceful, was known for her brute physical strength. Euryale, the far springer, possessed terrifying speed and agility. And Medusa, the guardian, was the most infamous, the one whose very biology had perfected the ultimate defense mechanism. A power so profound it echoed through millennia as a curse from the gods. The petrifying stare is not magic. It is an advanced, terrifyingly efficient biological weapon. The Gorgon's eyes are not simple ocular organs. They are complex biophotonic projectors, capable of emitting a concentrated patterned burst of light at an arcane frequency. This is no ordinary light. It is a delivery system. This eldritch signal is a visual neurotoxin. Upon entering the victim's eye, it bypasses conscious thought and travels directly down the optic nerve, instantly hijacking the central nervous system. It floods the brainstem with paralyzing signals, inducing immediate and total somatic arrest. The victim is frozen, conscious but utterly unable to move, a prisoner in their own body. But the true horror is yet to come. The initial paralysis is merely the first stage of this unfathomable biological assault. The second stage begins almost instantly, a process that turns living flesh into a stone-like effigy. The gaze triggers a catastrophic, runaway biomineralization. This process causes the victim's own cells to absorb ambient calcium salts from their blood and tissues at an exponential rate. It's a biological chain reaction that can't be stopped. Flesh, muscle, and organ tissue rapidly harden, calcifying from the inside out, preserving the body in its final moment of terror. The result is not true stone, but a hyper-calcified organic relic, precisely like those found scattered across the floor of the Mediterranean. The cascade of biomineralization is absolute. It is not merely a surface-level change, but a complete transmutation of organic matter. Every cell, every strand of tissue is flash fossilized by the Gorgon's gaze, creating a perfect yet lifeless stone effigy where a living being stood moments before. An unfathomable biological weapon. Now, let us analyze the anatomy of this terror, beginning with the most iconic feature, the serpent hair. Ancient art depicts a writhing crown, but this is a profound simplification. These are not mere snakes. They are a symbiotic colony of highly evolved, heat-seeking vipers, each one an independent organism, yet inextricably linked to the Gorgon's central nervous system. A living sensory array. This biological fusion grants the Gorgon an unparalleled perception of its environment. Each viper acts as a living sensor, detecting the faintest thermal signatures and subterranean vibrations. This creates a flawless 360-degree field of awareness, making a stealthy approach a tactical impossibility. Before you ever see her, she has already felt your body heat, your pulse, the very tremor of your approach. Here, we must make a profound perspective shift. The legend of Athena's curse is not history. It is a misremembered tragedy. The tale of a goddess's wrath is a classic folk memory, a simple narrative constructed by early civilizations to explain a biological cataclysm they could not possibly comprehend. The evidence points not to a divine act, but to a devastating prehistoric blight, an arcane genetic disease that swept through the Gorgon species. This plague, which likely caused the horrific mutations and petrifying abilities, was not a curse. It was an extinction event, a biological firestorm that left only ashes and a single, terrifying legend in its wake. The consequence of this plague was the creation of Medusa as we know her, not a monster by choice, but a survivor. She may be the last of her kind, an isolated remnant of a majestic and ancient species, twisted by disease into a figure of terror. The mythmakers saw a monster. The reality is an echo of a forgotten apocalypse, and this reality has left tangible traces in our modern world. Zoom out from the ancient texts to the digital precision of satellite imagery. Across the remote, unexplored cave systems of the Peloponnese Peninsula, geomapping reveals strange geological anomalies. At the mouths of these deep caverns stand clusters of eerily humanoid formations. For decades, geologists have dismissed these as oddly shaped stalagmites, natural limestone deposits carved by water and time. But they are not stone in the geological sense. They are the petrified remains of those who ventured too close, a silent, eternal gallery of the Gorgon's victims, standing as a permanent warning at the threshold of her lair. This chilling evidence connects directly to a modern and deeply unsettling encounter. We must now examine the Sarpedon incident of 1988. A seasoned team of 4 Greek speleologists charting a newly discovered cavern system in that very region, vanished without a trace. Their equipment was state-of-the-art, their experience unparalleled. Their final radio transmission, logged and archived, was not a call for help. It was a single, panicked shout that cut through the static. The lead explorer reported seeing something in the suffocating darkness beyond his headlamp's beam. He spoke of eyes glowing with a cold, impossible light just before the transmission was severed permanently. The team was never seen again. The Sarpedon incident is not an isolated event. It is a terrifying echo, a modern resonance of an ancient power that never truly vanished. The petrified forms of those commandos are a stark testament, not to a myth, but to a biological weapon of unfathomable potency. A weapon that has been adapting, evolving, and surviving for millennia, far beyond the confines of a single Greek island. This brings us to the most profound revelation of all. The legends were not just stories. They were a misinterpretation of a staggering biological truth. Medusa was never a singular monster. She was part of a lineage, and her story is not one of an end, but of a terrifying new beginning. The so-called curse from Athena was not a magical hex. It was a genetic divergence, a recessive trait that manifested in Medusa, stripping away the immortality her sisters possessed, but sharpening her petrifying gaze to an unparalleled lethality. She became mortal, yes, but in doing so, she became the key to her species' survival in a changing world, and from her death, life erupted. The winged horse, Pegasus, and the warrior Chrysaor were not arcane anomalies sprung from divine blood. They were her offspring, the first carriers of this new, mortal Gorgon genetic code. They were the vessels of her legacy, dispersing a terrifying biological inheritance into the world, far from the reach of would-be heroes. This genetic diaspora explains the chilling echoes of the Gorgon archetype across the globe. These are not independent inventions of human fear. The Balor of the evil eye in Celtic myth, whose single gaze could wither armies, is a clear branch of this lineage, a regional adaptation of the same unfathomable power. The same biological signature is found in the petrifying cockatrice of European folklore and the stone-gazing trolls of Norse legend, who turned intruders to rock in the blink of an eye. Each culture gave it a different name, a different face, but they were all documenting the same thing, a species with a gaze that could rewrite the laws of biology. Which leads to the ultimate, awe-inspiring question. If the Gorgon lineage survived, adapted, and spread across the entire planet, where are they now? The myths are not just history, they are a map to their current hiding places, a guide to their modern evolutionary paths. Could they have retreated deep within the Earth's crust? This could be the true source of legends about dwarves and their cavernous halls, jealously guarding vast treasures, which are, in fact, the perfectly preserved, petrified remains of intruders who wandered too deep. A subterranean adaptation for a species that shuns the light. Or perhaps they sought refuge in the one place surface dwellers could never truly conquer, the abyssal trenches of the ocean. Imagine a branch of the lineage evolving, their biophotonic gaze becoming a bioluminescent lure in the crushing dark, giving rise to tales of colossal krakens with hypnotic, soul-stealing eyes. The most chilling possibility, however, is that they adapted to hide in plain sight, evolving to suppress their more monstrous features, their petrifying stare becoming a subtle, unseen influence. They could be anywhere, anyone, a silent, enduring legacy of a power that turns life to stone, waiting in the shadows of our modern world. But this legacy is not merely an echo in stone or a whisper on the wind. It has evolved. The Gorgon's power, once concentrated in a singular, tragic figure, has dispersed, fragmenting into a dormant genetic code woven into the very fabric of human history. A potential that lies sleeping. This arcane inheritance, what some cryptobiologists term the Gorgon sequence, is not a curse, but a biological fail-safe. It's an unfathomable adaptation. The biophotonic neurotoxin, now diluted across millennia, no longer petrifies instantly, but exists as a latent defense mechanism, a final, desperate shield against existential threat. Think of it not as a monstrous trait, but as a profound, primeval survival instinct. The Gorgon's gaze is not an act of aggression, but a reflexive, biological response to overwhelming terror, a last resort, buried deep within the oldest parts of our genetic memory, waiting for a trigger of absolute, life-threatening duress. This changes everything. History is no longer a simple record of human events, but a hidden war of bloodlines. Secret societies have risen and fallen, not over gold or territory, but over the knowledge and control of this lineage. They sought to either harness this power or eradicate it completely. Ancient orders, like the shadowy brotherhood of the Ophis Guard, dedicated themselves to identifying and protecting those who carried the sequence. Their texts speak not of monsters, but of luminaries, individuals whose eyes could, in moments of peril, emit a faint, ethereal light that could momentarily paralyze an aggressor. A faint echo of the original, terrifying power. This reframes the myth of Perseus entirely. His quest was not one of simple monster slaying. He was an agent of containment, tasked with neutralizing a power so profound it threatened to unbalance the world. The Aegis shield, bearing Medusa's head, was not a trophy. It was a warning, a symbol of a power too vast to be wielded. And the trigger for this dormant ability? It remains the same as it was for the first Gorgon: extreme, mortal terror. Modern accounts from conflict zones and survival situations are filled with inexplicable phenomena. Assailants who suddenly freeze, overcome by a wave of inexplicable paralysis, their muscles locking for precious seconds. One declassified report from a Special Forces mission in the Amazon details an operative, cornered and facing certain death, whose attacker suddenly seized up, his body going rigid. The operative described a fleeting, almost imperceptible shimmer in the air, a split-second phenomenon that saved her life. She had no explanation. We do. The implications are staggering. This power is not gone. It is not a relic of a forgotten age. It is a living, breathing part of humanity's hidden biology, a spectral inheritance that surfaces in our most desperate moments. The legend didn't die with Medusa. It became part of us. So we must ask a new, more unsettling question. Not, was Medusa real? But who carries her legacy today? The power to turn flesh to stone may be diluted, but the potential, the ancient arcane code, endures. It sleeps in the DNA of countless individuals, a silent testament to a time when myth and biology were one and the same.